The alarm blared through the corridors of the Artemis, its harsh wail cutting through the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Captain Elena Chen jolted awake, her heart pounding against her ribs. This wasn't a drill. Her quarters flashed with emergency red lights as she scrambled from her bunk, muscle memory taking over as she pulled on her uniform. Status report, she barked into her comm unit, already moving toward the bridge. Lieutenant Rivera's voice crackled through the speaker. Unidentified vessel, Captain. Appeared out of nowhere at the edge of our sensor range. No transponder signal, no recognition codes. It's just sitting there. On my way, Elena replied, quickening her pace. The Artemis wasn't a military vessel. It was a diplomatic ship, part of the United Earth Alliance's outreach program. Their mission was peaceful exploration and establishing contact with any sentient species they encountered. In the 50 years since humans had ventured beyond their solar system, they'd met 12 different alien civilizations. Some were cautious but curious, others enthusiastic about new connections. None had been hostile, until now perhaps. The bridge doors hissed open as Elena stepped through. The main view screen dominated the far wall, displaying a sleek, obsidian craft against the backdrop of stars. Its design was unlike anything in the database, all sharp angles and what appeared to be weapon ports along its hull. Any response to our hails? Elena asked, sliding into the captain's chair. Negative, Communications Officer Patel replied, his fingers dancing across his console. I've tried all standard frequencies and protocols. Nothing. Dr. Kavita Okafor, the ship's xenobiologist, studied the alien vessel with narrowed eyes. Those look like weapon systems. Advanced ones. Chief Engineer Mike Thompson nodded grimly. And their energy signature is off the charts. Whatever powers that thing makes our fusion drives look like a child's toy. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity had been lucky in its initial encounters with alien life. What if their luck had finally run out? Keep trying to establish contact, she ordered. And bring up our shields. Defensive posture only. Just as the words left her mouth, the alien vessel suddenly flared with light. A beam lanced out, not toward the Artemis, but past it, scanning something in the void beyond. They're scanning Earth's direction, the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with tension. The alien ship went dark for 3 long seconds. Then, abruptly, every system on its hull lit up simultaneously. A message flashed across all Artemis communication channels. Not in any alien language, but in perfect English. Humans identified. Verification complete. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. How did they know English? How did they even know about humans specifically? Captain, Rivera called out, his voice rising in pitch. They're powering weapon systems. Before Elena could respond, another message came through. Your species has been monitored for 312 cycles. The decision is final. Prepare. Prepare for what? Elena muttered, then louder to her crew, battle stations. Divert all power to shields. The alien vessel began to move, not toward them, but in a wide arc, as if positioning itself. Then, impossibly, a tear seemed to open in the fabric of space itself, a swirling vortex of energy that hadn't been there seconds before. Some kind of artificial wormhole, Dr. Okafor breathed, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. Through the vortex came another ship. Then another. And another. Within minutes, the Artemis was facing not one hostile craft, but a fleet of them, 12 identical vessels arranged in perfect formation. Send emergency transmission to Earth, Elena ordered, her mouth dry. Priority Alpha. As Patel complied, the first alien vessel transmitted once more. The human experiment ends today. Your resistance is acknowledged but irrelevant. You were never meant to leave your world. The fleet began to advance, weapons systems glowing with building energy. The Artemis shields wouldn't hold against even one of those ships, let alone 12. Elena made a split-second decision. Prepare for emergency jump, she commanded. We need to warn Earth. As the engines spooled up for the desperate escape attempt, Elena couldn't help but wonder, what had humanity done to deserve this? What experiment were these aliens referring to? And most importantly, how could Earth possibly stand against a civilization with technology this advanced? The first energy blast struck the Artemis shields, and the bridge erupted in chaos. Whatever answers existed, Elena realized, they'd have to survive long enough to find them. The real fight for humanity's future had just begun. The Artemis lurched violently as the jump drive engaged, the stars outside the view screen stretching into brilliant streaks of light. The ship shuddered, groaning under the stress of an emergency jump executed too close to a gravitational field. Captain Chin gripped her chair, knuckles white, silently willing the aging diplomatic vessel to hold together. "Jump successful, Captain," Lieutenant Rivera announced, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. "We've cleared their sensor range, for now." "Damage report?" Elena demanded, already moving toward the tactical station. "Shields at 23%. Minor hull breaches on decks 3 and 4, automated seals engaged," Thompson replied, his fingers flying over the console. "Jump drives fried. We won't be making another one of those anytime soon." Elena nodded grimly. "Medical?" 12 injuries reported, none critical. Dr. Okafor responded from the medical bay calm, "Most are impact trauma from the sudden maneuvers." The bridge fell silent as the reality of their situation sank in. The Artemis was a diplomatic vessel carrying 38 crew members, scientists, diplomats, and support staff. They weren't soldiers. They weren't prepared for war. "I want everything we have on that transmission," Elena said finally. "Linguistics, contextual analysis, the works. And I want it yesterday." Officer Patel nodded. "Already on it, Captain. There's something strange about it." The syntax was perfect, but the phrasing was oddly formal, almost archaic. "The human experiment ends today," Elena repeated softly. Those words sent a chill through the bridge. Doctor Okafor approached, her dark eyes thoughtful. "Captain, I've been reviewing our first contact protocols. In all our encounters with alien species, none have ever referred to us as an experiment. None have ever indicated prior knowledge of Earth before we made contact." "Someone's been watching us," Rivera muttered. "For 312 cycles, whatever that means." Elena turned to the main console. "Computer, extrapolate our current position and calculate fastest sublight course to Earth." "Calculating," the AI responded. "Fastest course will require 14 days, 7 hours at maximum sustainable speed. 2 weeks. 2 weeks while those ships, with their superior technology and clear hostile intent, could reach Earth much sooner." The UA Defense Fleet was impressive by human standards, but against what they'd just witnessed? It would be a massacre. "We need to understand what we're dealing with," Elena decided. "Patel, work with science team to analyze everything we recorded about those ships. Thompson, I want options for boosting our sublight engines. Strip whatever non-essential systems you need." As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Elena retreated to her ready room. The moment the door closed behind her, she allowed herself one moment of pure, unfiltered fear. Her hands trembled as she sank into her chair, memories flooding back unbidden. She had been only 8 years old when humanity achieved faster-than-light travel. She still remembered watching the broadcasts with her parents in their small apartment in New Shanghai, the whole world celebrating as the barriers between stars finally fell. 20 years later, she had been part of the third wave of explorers, filled with the same hope and optimism that had defined that era of human expansion. Never once had they considered that there might be forces in the galaxy that didn't want humans reaching for the stars. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. "Captain," Patel's voice came through. "I found something in our database. Well, you should see this." Minutes later, the senior staff gathered around the conference table. Patel stood at the head, his expression grave. "The ships match nothing in your records," he began. "But when I ran their design specifications through historical archives, I found this." He pulled up an image on the main display, a blurry photograph from nearly 70 years ago, taken from an Earth-based telescope. It showed a distant object passing through the solar system, initially classified as an unusual comet. This object was observed for 3 days in 2178 before it suddenly vanished, Patel explained. The configuration matches our visitors with 87% certainty. Dr. Okafor leaned forward. That was 2 years before our first successful FTL test. They were scouting us, Rivera realized. Watching our technological development. There's more, Patel continued reluctantly. I searched for any references to human experiment in conjunction with unexplained phenomena. There are patterns. Throughout our history, unexplained technological leaps, mysterious archaeological findings that don't fit established timelines, even statistical anomalies in our evolutionary path. Elena felt the weight of his words. You're suggesting someone has been guiding human development? That we've been, what? Lab rats. I'm not suggesting anything, Captain, Patel replied quietly. Just reporting what I found. The implications hung heavy in the air. If humans had been part of some cosmic experiment, then something had changed. Something had triggered the end of the test, and possibly the end of humanity itself. Whatever's happening, Elena said firmly, rising to her feet, we're not going down without a fight. We need to warn Earth, and we need to understand what these beings want. As if in answer to her words, the ship's sensors suddenly blared to life. Captain, Rivera called from his station, face pale. They've found us. Battle stations. Elena commanded, the calm in her voice belying the fear gripping her chest. Evasive maneuvers, pattern delta. The Artemis banked hard, its damaged systems protesting as Rivera executed the maneuver. Through the viewscreen, they could see 2 of the alien vessels approaching, moving with an unnatural precision that made them seem more like extensions of a single mind than individual ships. They're not firing, Officer Patel observed, his voice tense. They're hurting us. Elena saw it too. Each time the Artemis attempted to break away, the alien vessels would position themselves to force a course correction. They were being corralled, pushed deliberately toward an empty sector of space. Captain, Thompson called from engineering, his voice crackling over the comm, I've been analyzing their propulsion systems. They're using some kind of localized space-time manipulation. It's why they can move so damn fast. But there's something else. They're generating massive energy spikes that don't correspond to their movements or weapons. What are you saying? Elena asked. I think they're communicating. Not with us, with something else. Something that isn't here yet. As if confirming his theory, space itself seemed to ripple before them. A massive distortion formed, far larger than the wormholes that had brought the fleet. Through it emerged a vessel that dwarfed even the alien ships, a colossal structure that seemed less like a spacecraft and more like a mobile city, its surface covered with pulsing lights and geometric patterns that shifted hypnotically. My God, Dr. Okafor whispered. The Artemis's sensors went wild, then abruptly died. Moments later, the engines shut down, followed by life support. Only emergency lighting remained. They've disabled us completely, Thompson reported, the edge of panic in his voice. Some kind of targeted electromagnetic pulse, but more sophisticated than anything we've ever developed. Elena stood from her chair, facing the view screen with her shoulders squared. Whatever was coming, she would meet it head-on. Captain, Patel called, his voice oddly distant. We're being scanned. Not just the ship, individually. Every crew member felt it, a strange tingling sensation that started at the base of the skull and spread throughout the body. It wasn't painful but deeply invasive, as if something was sifting through their very thoughts. And then, without warning, it stopped. The lights returned. The engines hummed back to life. We're receiving a transmission, Patel announced, his fingers hovering uncertainly over his console. It's different from before. Elena nodded. On screen. The view screen flickered, and for the first time, they saw the beings they faced. The alien was humanoid in the broadest sense, bipedal with a head and limbs, but the similarities ended there. Its skin was pale and translucent, revealing a complex network of luminescent vessels beneath. Its eyes were large, completely black, and seemed to contain pinpricks of light like tiny stars. When it spoke, its mouth didn't move. Instead, the lights beneath its skin pulsed in rhythm with the words. Captain Elena Chen of Earth Vessel Artemis. The being said, its voice resonating directly in their minds rather than through the ship's speakers. I am the observer. We have studied your kind since your earliest days. Elena stepped forward. Why have you attacked us? What experiment are you referring to? The observer tilted its head, an unsettlingly human gesture. We did not attack. We prevented. There is a difference you cannot yet comprehend. Prevented what? Elena demanded. The contamination. The observer's inner lights pulsed more rapidly. Humanity was seeded on Earth by those we once called allies. You were designed as weapons, biological constructs with intelligence but without restraint. A species of perfect soldiers, your aggression and adaptability unmatched in the Galaxy. A murmur ran through the bridge crew. The implications were staggering. That's absurd, Elena said, though a cold feeling settled in her stomach. We're not weapons. Your creators were destroyed eons ago, the observer continued, ignoring her protest. The project was abandoned. You were meant to decay, to self-destruct through your own violent tendencies. Instead, you evolved. You developed culture, art, cooperation, qualities you were never meant to possess. So we exceeded expectations, Rivera said defiantly. And that's a problem? It is an anomaly, the observer corrected. One we have monitored with great interest. For millennia, we debated whether to terminate the experiment or allow it to continue under observation. When you achieved space travel, the debate intensified. When you developed faster-than-light capability, a decision became necessary. The being's next words seemed to drop the temperature on the bridge by several degrees. The consensus was to eliminate the threat. Humanity has progressed too far, too quickly. Your potential is concerning. Elena felt her crew's eyes on her, looking for reassurance she couldn't honestly give. Humanity's fate apparently rested on the judgment of beings who had watched them since before recorded history, beings who saw them as abandoned weapons rather than people. However, the observer continued, there was dissent among us. Some believe your anomalous development indicates you might transcend your original purpose. They argue you deserve the opportunity to prove yourselves. And what do you believe? Elena asked quietly, the observer's inner lights dimmed slightly. I have watched your kind longer than any other. I have witnessed your capacity for both remarkable creation and horrific destruction. I have seen the worst and best of humanity. The massive ship suddenly emitted a pulse of energy that washed over the Artemis. The smaller alien vessels began moving into formation around it. You have been chosen, Captain Shin, the observer said. You and your crew. The test begins now. Test? Elena repeated. What test? But the observer was already fading from the screen. Its final words echoed through their minds. Prove that humanity deserves to exist. The view screen went black. A moment later, the sensors detected a massive energy buildup in the mothership. Space twisted around them as reality itself seemed to tear open. What's happening? Elena demanded, gripping her chair as the ship began to shudder. They're creating another wormhole, Thompson shouted over the groaning of the ship's hull. But it's different. The energy signature is off the charts. Dr. Okafor's eyes widened as she read the data streaming across her console. Captain, the quantum parameters. This isn't just a spatial displacement. They're sending us somewhere, but not just through space. The light from the wormhole grew blinding, engulfing the Artemis completely. Elena's last conscious thought was a desperate hope that whatever test awaited them, humanity would prove worthy of survival. Then everything went white. Consciousness returned to Elena in waves, each bringing with it fragments of sensation, the cool floor beneath her cheek, the acrid smell of fried electronics, the distant groans of her awakening crew. Her eyes fluttered open to emergency lighting that cast long shadows across the bridge. For a moment, disorientation clouded her thoughts. Then memory crashed back. The alien ships. The observer. The wormhole. Status report, she croaked, pushing herself to her feet. Her head throbbed mercilessly. Rivera was already at his station, his face illuminated by the dim glow of backup systems. Main powers offline. Life support functioning on auxiliary. Navigation. He paused, frowning at the readings. Navigation doesn't make any sense, Captain. What do you mean? According to these readings, we're still in the same sector of space. Same coordinates. But he gestured toward the viewscreen. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Outside was Earth, but not the Earth she knew. This planet was darker, its continents reshaped, its oceans larger and deeper blue. Massive structures that could only be artificial dotted its surface, glinting in the sunlight. That's impossible, Dr. Okafor whispered, joining them at the viewscreen. The continental configuration, it's Earth, but millions of years from now. Or an alternate timeline, Thompson suggested, nursing a gash on his forehead. The wormhole might have sent us through dimensional space, not just physical space. Before Elena could respond, Patel called out from his console. Captain, I'm detecting transmissions from the surface. Thousands of them. And they're in English. Modified, evolved, but recognizably English. Are you saying there are humans down there? Elena asked, incredulous. I'm saying we need to hide, Patel replied urgently. Because whatever's down there just launched ships. A lot of ships. And they're heading straight for us. The crew scrambled to their stations as Elena issued rapid commands. With main power offline, their options were limited. They could neither fight nor flee. Passive scans only, she ordered. Let's see what we're dealing with before we make contact. The approaching vessels appeared on the viewscreen. Sleek, aggressive craft with unmistakable weapons arrays. Their design was nothing like the alien ships that had brought them here, but neither were they like any human craft Elena had ever seen. They moved with precision, surrounding the disabled Artemis in a perfect containment pattern. Their technology is decades beyond ours, Thompson murmured, analyzing the scans. Maybe centuries. A transmission cut through their systems, bypassing their damaged communications array. Unidentified vessel, a voice commanded in strangely accented English. You have entered restricted Earth space. Identify yourself immediately or be destroyed. Elena shared a look with her senior officers before stepping forward. This is Captain Elena Chin of the United Earth Alliance vessel Artemis. We are on a diplomatic mission and have been displaced. We come in peace. Silence stretched for several seconds. Then, impossible. The Artemis was destroyed in the first contact incident, year 2327. All hands lost. The bridge crew exchanged stunned glances. 2,327? That was nearly 3 years in their future. I assure you, we are very much alive, Elena responded carefully. There seems to be some confusion. From our perspective, the year is 2324. Another long pause. Prepare to be boarded, the voice finally replied. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. Before Elena could protest, the transmission cut off. Seconds later, the ship shuddered as docking clamps engaged. Captain, Dr. Okafor said urgently, if we've somehow been transported to our own future, we need to be extremely careful. Anything we learn could catastrophically alter our timeline if we ever return. Elena nodded grimly. Let's worry about surviving this encounter first. Thompson, get as many systems back online as you can. Rivera, secure sensitive data. Patel, I want every T. And you can tell me about these ships and whoever's commanding them. The airlock cycled. Heavy footsteps approached the bridge. When the doors slid open, Elena found herself facing a squad of armored soldiers. Their helmets concealed their features, but their stance and discipline screamed military training. They parted to reveal a tall figure in a commanding officer's uniform. The officer removed their helmet, and Elena struggled to maintain her composure. The face staring back at her was her own, older, scarred down one cheek, with eyes that had seen too much horror. Well, said the older Elena, her voice hard with disbelief and something darker. This complicates things. Elena found her voice. Me? I was you, her doppelganger corrected coldly, before the observer and its kind revealed their true intentions. The crew stared in stunned silence as the older Elena surveyed them, her gaze lingering on each face with a complex mix of emotions. Rivera, Okafor, Thompson, Patel. She named each officer, her voice catching slightly. You all died. I watched it happen. What are you talking about? Elena demanded. The observer said we were being tested. A bitter laugh escaped her older self. Is that what they told you? There was never any test, Captain. There was only preparation. Preparation for what? The older Elena's eyes hardened. Harvesting. They've been cultivating humanity for millennia, guiding our development, letting us advance just enough to be useful. The story about us being weapons was a lie. We're not weapons, we're resources. They need our brains, our consciousness. Something about human neural patterns makes us uniquely compatible with their technology. Horror spread through the bridge as the implications sank in. The first contact incident wasn't first contact at all, the older Elena continued. It was first harvest. They took millions in the initial wave. Earth fought back, of course. We always do. But their technology... She gestured helplessly. We never stood a chance. Then how are you here? Elena asked. How is Earth still standing? A new voice answered from the doorway. Because we changed the rules of engagement. The observer stepped onto the bridge, but this wasn't the ethereal being they had encountered before. This observer wore a human body like an ill-fitting suit, its movements slightly too fluid, its expressions slightly too calculated. Only the eyes remained the same, deep black pools containing galaxies. You, Elena whispered. The observer smiled with its borrowed face. The experiment continues, Captain Chin. Though not as originally designed. The older Elena's hand moved to her sidearm. Don't trust anything it says. They're masters of manipulation. Your future self speaks from pain and limited understanding, the observer said smoothly. What she doesn't comprehend is that you are the anomaly we've been searching for. Your crew, this precise moment in your timeline, there is something unique here. Something that could change everything. The two Elenas faced each other across the bridge, one hardened by years of devastating war, the other still coming to grips with revelations about humanity's place in the cosmos. Between them stood a being of incomprehensible age and power, wearing human skin like a disguise, and around them all, hanging in the void, an Earth scarred by a conflict that hadn't yet begun. Whatever you're planning, the older Elena said quietly to the observer, it ends now. The observer's stolen face displayed something almost like amusement. On the contrary, Captain Chin. It has only just begun. The ship's systems suddenly flared to life around them, displays lighting up with code that wrote itself across every screen. The Artemis trembled as dormant systems awakened, transformed by technology never meant for human hands. What's happening? Elena demanded, looking from her future self to the observer. The third variable, the observer replied cryptically. The one neither of us anticipated. From somewhere deep within the ship came a sound none of them had ever heard before, a resonant pulse that seemed to vibrate through metal and flesh alike. The sound of two realities colliding, the resonant pulse grew stronger, vibrating through the ship's hull until speech became nearly impossible. Displays throughout the bridge flickered with cascading code, systems activating and reconfiguring themselves without human input. The future soldiers raised their weapons uncertainly, looking to the older Elena for orders. Evacuation protocol. The older Elena shouted above the noise. Get your people off this ship now. As the soldiers retreated, the observer remained unnaturally still, its borrowed face displaying something almost like wonder. Fascinating, it murmured. After all this time, Captain Elena grabbed her future counterpart's arm before she could follow her troops. What's happening to my ship? What is the third variable? The older Elena's scarred face hardened. I don't know. This never happened in my timeline. She hesitated, then added, but there were rumors, stories from other resistance cells about ships that transformed, crews that merged with their vessels. We dismissed them as desperate fantasy. They were not fantasies, the observer interjected, its voice somehow cutting through the growing cacophony. They were instances of spontaneous integration. Extremely rare. Significant. Integration with what? Thompson demanded, desperately trying to regain control of his engineering systems. Before the observer could answer, Dr. Okafor called out from her station, her voice tight with urgency. "Captain, I'm detecting massive changes in the ship's quantum structure. It's like the Artemis is evolving." "Not the ship," the observer corrected. "The synthesis. You have been carrying it since you first encountered our vessels. A seed algorithm, designed to activate under precise conditions." "You infected my ship," Elena demanded. "Not infected," the observer replied, its stolen features almost gentle. "Enhanced. Your neural patterns, combined with your ship systems, activated by the temporal anomaly of meeting your future self, these are the necessary components for synthesis." The older Elena drew her weapon, pointing it at the observer. "Whatever you've done, undo it now." The observer regarded the weapon with mild curiosity. "I cannot. The process was designed to be irreversible, specifically to prevent interference. And in any case, I would not stop it if I could. This is what we have waited for across thousands of your generations." A new alarm blared as the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated. Lieutenant Rivera clung to his console. "Captain, something's happening to the wormhole that brought us here. It's reopening." Through the view screen, they watched as space twisted and folded, the fabric of reality stretching until it tore open once more. But this time, instead of alien vessels, something else emerged, a humanoid figure, glowing with energy that shifted between all visible wavelengths. "Who the hell is that?" the older Elena breathed. The observer dropped to eye. T.S. knees, an expression of reverence transforming its borrowed face. "The architect." The glowing figure approached the Artemis, passing through its hull as if it were no barrier at all. Moments later, it stepped onto the bridge, a being of pure energy in roughly human form, its features indistinct except for eyes that held the depth of countless stars. "My children," it spoke, its voice resonating directly in their minds rather than through their ears. "How far you have come." The observer remained kneeling. "The synthesis is underway as you foresaw." "Indeed," the architect replied, though not precisely as planned. The timeline bifurcation was unexpected. Elena stepped forward, placing herself between the energy being and her crew. "Who are you? What do you want with us?" The architect's form shifted slightly, becoming more distinctly human, an elderly man with kind eyes. "I am what remains of the civilization that seeded your world, Captain Chin. The observer told you that your creators were destroyed. This is partially true. We transcended our physical forms millions of years ago, but in doing so, we lost something essential: the capacity for innovation, for true creativity. We became observers rather than participants in the universe." "So you created us?" Elena asked. "As an experiment, yes. Not as weapons, but as potential successors. We gave you the spark, then watched as you developed in ways we never anticipated. Your capacity for both creation and destruction, your resilience, your adaptability, these were the qualities we hoped to reclaim." The older Elena scoffed. "By harvesting our brains? By waging war against Earth?" The architect turned to her. "No, that was never our intention. The harvesting, the war, these were the actions of a faction that grew impatient, that sought to absorb your qualities through force rather than synthesis. They broke from our consensus and acted independently." "The observer works for them," the older Elena insisted. "It led the first wave." "I serve the architect alone," the observer replied, rising to its feet. "I was sent to find the optimal point in your timeline, the moment when humanity would be ready for true synthesis." Elena's mind raced, connecting the pieces. "And that's what's happening to my ship? To my crew? We're being synthesized with your technology." "Not just with our technology," the architect corrected gently. "With our consciousness. A true merger of our species, neither human nor transcended, but something new. Something that preserves the best qualities of both." Dr. Okafor stepped forward. "The third variable, it's you, isn't it? You're what neither the observer nor future Elena anticipated." The architect nodded. I have remained hidden for millennia, waiting for the observer to find the right moment, the right humans. When it sent your ship through the wormhole, I knew the time had come. The pulse that had been building throughout the ship suddenly intensified, and with it came a strange sense of connection. Elena could feel her crew's thoughts, their fears and hopes mingling with her own. More than that, she could sense the ship itself, its systems becoming extensions of her consciousness. I can feel it, Thompson whispered, his eyes wide. The engines, the hull, it's like they're part of me. The synthesis accelerates, the observer noted. Soon it will be complete. The older Elena watched in fascination and horror. This never happened in my timeline. We just fought and died. Because in your timeline, the observer chose a different moment, the architect explained. A moment of fear rather than courage. The synthesis requires willing participants. Elena felt a question forming in her expanded consciousness. What happens when the synthesis is complete? What do we become? Something magnificent, the architect said simply. The first of a new species capable of bridging dimensions, of healing the wounds in space-time, including the one that resulted in this timeline split. The older Elena's expression darkened. You're saying all of it, the war, the millions dead, was because you picked the wrong moment? A miscalculation with profound consequences, the architect acknowledged. One that you now have the power to undo. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. We can prevent your future from happening, she said to her older self. We can rewrite the timeline. It's not that simple, the older Elena argued. You'd be erasing my entire existence, everyone I've fought alongside, to save billions, Rivera interjected softly. Including all of us who died in your timeline. A tense silence fell over the bridge as the older Elena struggled with the weight of the decision. Finally, she holstered her weapon. Do what you have to do. The architect gestured, and a shimmering portal opened on the bridge. The synthesis is nearly complete. You must return to your exact point of origin and close the loop. What about her? Elena asked, nodding toward her future self. I cannot exist in your corrected timeline, the older Elena said with resigned acceptance. But I can help you navigate back to the precise moment. As they prepared to depart, the observer approached Elena. There is something you should know, Captain. The synthesis changes you, but it does not control you. What you become is your choice, not ours. The Artemis shuddered as its transformation reached completion. Through her new connection to the ship, Elena could feel its system stabilizing, its structure reinforced with technology beyond human understanding. More than that, she could feel her crew becoming a unified consciousness while somehow retaining their individual identities, an impossible paradox made possible through the synthesis. It's time, the architect announced. The window is closing. The older Elena stepped closer to her younger self. Remember everything I've told you. Trust your crew, not the aliens, no matter how sincere they seem. Elena nodded, then turned to her officers. Stations, everyone. Let's rewrite history. The Artemis entered the portal, reality bending around them as they traversed dimensions back to their point of origin. Through their shared consciousness, the crew navigated the complex currents of space-time with intuitive precision that would have been impossible before the synthesis. They emerged exactly where they had begun, facing the alien fleet, the massive mothership looming before them. But now, everything was different. The Artemis hummed with power beyond anything human engineering could achieve, and its crew operated as a single unified entity. The observer's ship hailed them immediately. Captain Shin, you have returned, changed. Elena's voice resonated with newfound authority. And we bring a message from the architect. Silence greeted her words, then frantic energy signatures as the alien vessels began powering weapon systems. They fear what you've become, the whisper of the architect echoed in their collective consciousness. Show them what synthesis truly means. With a thought, Elena directed the Artemis between the alien fleet and Earth. The ship responded instantly, its new capabilities allowing it to move with impossible speed and precision. Another thought, and a shield of energy expanded outward, enveloping not just the Artemis but the entire planet behind it. "We reject your harvest," Elena announced to the alien fleet. "Earth is under our protection now." The mothership fired, a devastating beam of energy that would have annihilated the old Artemis in seconds. Instead, the energy dissipated harmlessly against their shields, absorbed and redirected. "Humanity was never meant to be your resource," Elena continued. "We are not your experiment to control or terminate. We are your equals, perhaps more." Through their expanded awareness, the crew could sense confusion and fear spreading through the alien fleet. One by one, the smaller vessels began to retreat. "You have made a grave error," the observer's voice came through, no longer confident but uncertain. "The consensus will not accept this outcome." "Then the consensus will have to evolve," Elena replied. "As we have." The mothership hung motionless for several tense moments. Then, without another word, it generated a wormhole and disappeared, the remainder of the fleet following quickly behind. In the sudden silence, Elena turned the Artemis toward Earth, their home, now forever changed by what they had become. Through their shared consciousness, a single thought resonated. This was not an ending, but a beginning. As the synthesis stabilized, each crew member began to understand their new reality. They remained human in form and thought, but with expanded capabilities and a connection to each other that transcended normal communication. The Artemis itself had become an extension of their collective will, neither fully ship nor fully alive, but something entirely new. "What do we tell Earth?" Rivera asked through their mental link. "How do we explain what we've become?" Elena considered this as she gazed at the beautiful blue planet. "The truth, that humanity has taken its next evolutionary step, not alone, but guided by our own future and the architects of our past." As they prepared to make contact with Earth authorities, Dr. Okafor detected something unexpected, a quantum signature emanating from deep within the ship's core. "Captain," she called out, her concern rippling through their shared consciousness. "I'm detecting a message embedded in our new systems." The crew focused their collective attention on the signature, decoding it through their enhanced perception. It was brief, but unmistakable, a warning from their future selves. "The architect lies. The synthesis is not the end. It is only preparation. They are coming." Elena shared a troubled glance with her officers as the implications settled over them. They had prevented one threat, only to discover another looming on the horizon, one perhaps even greater than the first. But they would face it together as something more than human, yet human still at their core. Whatever came next, Earth would not stand alone. The Artemis turned toward home, carrying within it both humanity's greatest achievement and its most urgent warning. The Artemis docked at Earth's orbital station 3 days later. Those 3 days had given Elena and her crew time to understand their transformation and prepare for the inevitable questions. Through their shared consciousness, they had debated endlessly about how much to reveal and to whom. The warning embedded in their systems haunted their collective thoughts. The architect lies. They are coming. As the airlock cycled and the boarding ramp extended, Elena stood at the head of her crew. They appeared unchanged physically, but anyone looking closely might notice the subtle synchronicity in their movements, the way they seemed to communicate without speaking. Admiral Reeves met them personally, his weathered face a mask of professional calm that barely concealed his burning curiosity. Behind him stood a delegation of UA officials, scientists, and military personnel. "Captain Chen," he greeted her formally. "Your mission report made for interesting reading." Elena smiled slightly. "I imagine so, sir." "You claim your ship repelled an alien fleet single-handedly." "Not single-handedly," Elena corrected, gesturing to her crew. "And not entirely our ship, either. More accurately, we became something new together." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "And this synthesis, as you call it, what exactly does it entail?" Elena exchanged glances with her officers, their shared thoughts confirming what they had already decided. Full disclosure, with one exception, the warning would remain their secret for now, until they understood its meaning. "Perhaps it would be easier to show you," Elena suggested. With a collective thought, the crew demonstrated a small fraction of their new abilities. The lights in the station flickered as they established a brief mental link with the station's systems. For just a moment, everyone in the room felt a whisper of the connection the Artemis crew shared, not intrusive, but like a gentle invitation to understand. Admiral Reeves staggered slightly, steadying himself against a console. "My God," he whispered. "We remain human," Dr. Okafor assured him, stepping forward. "Our values, memories, personalities, they're intact. We're just expanded." "Evolved," Thompson added. The Admiral regained his composure with visible effort. "And you believe this transformation saved us from invasion?" "For now," Elena confirmed. "The alien fleet retreated when they realized what we'd become. But they'll adapt. They'll return with new strategies." "Which is why we need to prepare," Rivera interjected. "The synthesis we underwent, it can be replicated. Not forced upon anyone, but offered to those who choose it." The following weeks unfolded in a blur of debriefings, examinations, and global security councils. The world's governments reacted with predictable alarm to the news of both the averted invasion and the transformed crew. Some called for the Artemis to be quarantined, its crew studied like laboratory specimens. Others recognized the potential advantage their transformation represented. Through it all, Elena and her crew remained unified, patient but firm in their autonomy. They submitted to non-invasive tests but refused to be separated or confined. Their enhanced abilities made such measures largely unenforceable anyway, a fact they demonstrated with gentle but unmistakable clarity when a covert military team attempted to seize the Artemis for national security reasons. 2 months after their return, they established the Synthesis Protocol, a framework for carefully expanding their numbers while researching the technology that had transformed them. Volunteers from various scientific and military backgrounds underwent rigorous screening before being offered the chance to join what the media had dubbed the next step in human evolution. Elena watched from the observation deck as the first new synthesis took place. 20 volunteers had been selected, each bringing unique skills and perspectives. The Artemis hummed beneath her feet, its systems interfacing with the specially designed Cha. Burr where the volunteers waited. "Are we doing the right thing?" Patel asked, joining her at the viewport. Elena didn't answer immediately. Through their shared consciousness, she could feel the complex emotions of her crew, their pride in humanity's response, their lingering fears about the warning, their hopes for the future. "I don't know," she admitted finally, "but I know we can't face what's coming alone. Humanity needs every advantage we can give it." "And the warning?" Dr. Okafor's thought touched their minds. "About the architect?" "We keep searching," Elena decided. "The synthesis gave us access to knowledge beyond our previous understanding. Somewhere in that knowledge must be the truth about the architect and whoever they are." As if in response to her words, the Artemis's sensors detected something at the edge of the solar system, a quantum fluctuation that lasted only microseconds before disappearing. Too brief to identify, but definitely artificial. "They're watching," Rivera observed. "Let them watch," Elena replied, straightening her shoulders. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together, not just our crew, but all of humanity." Thompson smiled slightly. Humanity identified, indeed. 6 months later, Elena stood on a hillside overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the first real shore leave she'd taken since their return. The synthesis had continued to spread, carefully and voluntarily, creating a growing network of enhanced humans who maintain their individuality while sharing a profound connection. Research into the alien technology had accelerated human development by decades in some fields, particularly space travel and energy production. The first ships designed with synthesis technology were already under construction, vessels that would bond with their crews just as the Artemis had, extending humanity's reach farther into the galaxy, and still, they searched for answers about the warning about them, whoever was coming. Some nights, Elena would connect deeply with the Artemis, sifting through the vast stores of knowledge embedded in its systems, looking for clues the architect might have hidden. The sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Elena felt Rivera's approach before she heard him, their shared consciousness making his presence familiar and comforting. Beautiful, isn't it? He said, stopping beside her. Worth protecting, she agreed. The new long-range sensors are online, he told her. Thompson says they can detect quantum signatures 10 times farther than before. Elena nodded, understanding the implication. They were casting their net wider, hoping to catch any sign of the approaching threat, or perhaps the truth about the architect. Whatever's coming, she said quietly, we'll be ready. As darkness fell and stars appeared overhead, Elena gazed upward with new perspective. Somewhere out there, ancient forces moved in patterns they were only beginning to understand. Humanity had been shaped, tested, and nearly harvested by beings who had watched from the shadows for millennia. But now, humans were watching back. Evolving, adapting, unifying without losing the spark of individuality that made them uniquely human. The synthesis hadn't erased their humanity, it had amplified it, giving them the tools to protect their future. Whatever secrets the universe still held, whatever threats loomed on the horizon, Elena knew one thing with absolute certainty: humanity's story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The alert had sounded. Humans had been identified. And now, the universe would have to reckon with what humanity had become.